am here with the fabulous and brilliant and compassionate Melissa Maris, also known as Lissa's Raw Food Romance. I think a lot of you probably are familiar with her channel. I've been following your channel like since the beginning, I'm pretty sure. I remember those early videos of like, what's like 6 months raw or whatever. It was like very, very, very early on. And so I want to talk a little bit about kind of your history and how you got into raw food specifically as kind of you and I had a very similar trajectory because back in the olden days of the internet, if you wanted to go vegan, really it was just the raw foodists who had an internet presence. And so vegan and raw vegan were synonymous. There wasn't really a vegan world or a plant-based world back in the early 2000s. It was just like David Wolf.
Yeah.
And like a couple of other really high profile people who, I think a lot of us encountered that very early and it made this big impression. So you've talked before about how you really wanted to go vegan, but it was sort of raw food was just what you thought vegans ate. So you just want to do like the very short version of what brought you into it and your initial entry point into raw food and also just a plant-based diet in general.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much for inviting me on. This is going to be such a great call. I'm so excited.
Very excited.
So my story starts, I'll try to go as quick as possible. But it starts when I was really young. My mom was really into natural health and she wasn't vegan or vegetarian or anything, but she always like didn't eat the junk food and she was really healthy. She ate as much organic as she could. And so I really looked up to her. And then in my early 20s, like 19, I was diagnosed with candida overgrowth. I was not breastfed. I had a really bad diet when I was younger. It was like my dad would buy us like candy and pizza and everything. Like I ate a lot of junk, even though my mom didn't. So I'd always look up to her. But I was diagnosed with candida. I had serious gut issues. My hormones were all over the place. Like sometimes I would go 3 to 9 months without a period. That was pretty regular for me. I had cystic acne, joint pain, all kinds of stuff. And in 2004, while I was working at a natural health store, I discovered David Wolf and some other people. And I was really drawn to the raw food diet, but I could never stick to it. And looking back over those 10 years from 2004 to 2014, I must have tried raw like hundreds of times, but I was never able to stick to it because I was always stuck in diet culture. Like even in the natural health industry, when I was working at the health food store, you're still, even though it's natural, you're still indoctrinated with eat less, move more, portion control. You need tons of healthy fats, take this pill, that kind of stuff. So I tried, but I was always under eating and I was always eating too many fats because I was scared to eat low fat and I was scared to eat more calories. I was scared of fruit. They had me scared of fruit too. So in 2014, I had experienced like weight gain after some weight loss doing a keto style diet at the gym. And I just was like, I had no energy. My acne was worse. My joint pain was worse. And I was like, if this is what it takes to be healthy, I don't want to do it. So I kind of gave up. And then in 2014, I used to wake up every night with these heart flutters and I was eating like the worst stuff, like a bag of Doritos for breakfast, like
No,
Doritos.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And I was drinking 2 energy drinks a day, most days, and coffees on top of that. So I would have these like heart flutters in the middle of the night and they'd wake me up and I'd feel like I was having a heart attack and then I couldn't get back to sleep. So I dreaded going to sleep at night. It was like, I hated that part of my day. So this one morning, I woke up with these heart flutters and I was like, I have to do something about this because one day I am going to die and I don't want to die now. So I went back to my old journals. I went back to my old inspirations, like Fully Raw Christina was one of my bigger ones too. And I just like binge watched all these videos. I was just like watching and watching. And then somebody mentioned in the comments of one of Fully Raw Christina's videos to watch Forks Over Knives, Cowspiracy, and Earthlings. And they're like, oh, go vegan. And I was like, okay. So I was like soaking up as much as I could that day. And I watched those 3 movies and I was instantly vegan. I never had the vegan connection until that day. I was like, I'm vegan for the rest of my life. Like, this is something that I need to do. And so obviously defaulted to raw because it was the one that resonated the most, like you said, right? It was just like there was so much that I could, I mean, not as much as there is now, not at all, but like, you know, I felt there was decent amount. I joined some Facebook groups and stuff. And yeah, from that day, I was like, okay, I'm going to try the low fat, higher like food approach. And
Right.
it was so easy for me to do. I was like, this is great. I feel good. I feel satiated and I don't need like all these fats. Like I still eat fats and I ate fats, but it was in an appropriate amount for my body. And I was just eating abundantly and it was so easy. And then after that, like I lost the 70 pounds, my acne cleared up, my hormones balanced, my joint pain went away, my mood improved, my gut has improved so much over like my candida went away, my all my gut issues. Like my mom had colon cancer, but she was never vegan.
Mhm.
She ate a lot of meat and eggs and stuff. And she had colon cancer probably like, I don't know, like 7 years ago or something. She's still okay now, but um and my uncle, her brother, died with complications with Crohn's. He had his
Mm.
colon removed and stuff. So I really have like this passion for gut health because of my
Yeah,
family history.
understandably. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's why I'm always like geeking out on improving my gut score
Yeah.
and stuff like
What's your
that. So
score?
yeah,
Yeah.
what's my score? My score 94.37%
That's
according
a
to
pretty
my
good score.
yeah. You know, and
Yeah.
every 6 months it's going up slightly, like, because as I make tweaks, you know, it takes time to continue to grow and improve and stuff. But yeah, I hope that was good.
Yeah.
That's my story.
No, that is awesome. Yeah, there's so many places to start with that because it's like I relate so much to the story. I had such a similar trajectory. I did have the vegan connection earlier on, but it was, you know, in and out of junk food veganism and you know, no even sort of growing up also with a healthy mom and a junk food dad. And my mom had the vegan stuff. She had the McDougall and the Pritikin stuff kind of around, but we never really followed that lifestyle. It was just kind of in the background, and maybe we'll put some wheat germ on your cereal or something. And so, but it's the same kind of that point that you got to after doing the keto like starvation diet where you did lose a lot of weight and you know that you were successful, you had the results that you were looking for, but then you get to this point where if that's what you have to do to get there and maintain it, just like screw it. Like this isn't possible. And for those of us who have been on the conveyor belt for so long of the binge restrict cycle, it's I think that there's got to be a better way, and that's what we talk. I have groups that talk about these issues, and with clients, I mean, it's always how can you get off of this hamster wheel of the binge restrict cycle. And I think for you, finding raw food, I mean, you really beat that drum of eat abundantly, eat enough calories, eat 2,000 calories plus a day. And that is like the 1,500 calorie a day maximum psyop that has been leveraged on women since we were kids. I think is almost impossible to escape because it's always in your head like I can't, there's no way I can lose weight, I can't lose weight unless I eat 1,500 1,400. There was a plant-based doctor who shall go unnamed who somebody sent me a clip recently was telling on the record saying, you know, if you're having trouble losing weight on 1,800 calories a day, then you need to eat 1,600. And if you're eating 1,600 and you're not losing weight, you need to eat 1,400. And if you're still not losing weight, you need to eat 1,200. Like just yeah, absolutely, like a very high profile plant-based doctor was recommending starvation diets. And so this is not everybody is doing that. Not everyone in the plant-based world is kind of advocating it at the same level. But I think it persists as this notion because first of all, that's what most of our experience tells us, that that's the only way we can lose weight. And if we eat more than that, we're not going to be successful. And second of all, because it is the information that comes down from on high. And it's, you know, it's been in every single magazine article we've read since we were 8 years old. So, and I know you've talked about you just gotten to this point of, I'm done. This isn't even about weight loss anymore. I just need to figure out a way to eat for life, like that is healthy and that is not a bunch of crap. It's not Doritos for breakfast. I was a Doritos fiend as well. The only reason I was able to quit Doritos is they're not vegan for the most part.
Mhm.
And so, like, how did you come to this place of trusting the process, with a whole plant-based diet that in your case happened to be raw?
That's such a good question. Because that's the point that everybody wants to get to, or they want to somehow have a formula to have this experience. But when it comes down to it, it's really just, I don't want to say rock bottom, but it is kind of like that. You come to your wits' end and you're just like, I almost will do anything, right,
Yeah.
to get there. But in my case, I feel like at that point, I just wanted to release everything. And it felt really good to just let it all go. Like, let the body image go, let the need to be perfect go, let whatever go. Like, and just focus every single day, one day at a time. That was one of my big things that was helped me to be successful, was to just focus one day at a time. Like, I'd wake up and be like, today I choose raw vegan food. That's what I'm going to do today. And I can do other stuff another time, whatever, because our minds tend to be too, like, not understand what never means.
Yeah.
We say,
Yeah.
like, I'm never going to have that again.
Hmm.
Kind of puts the food in control. And some people can get really scared of that. Like, they're scared that they'll never eat that thing again. So I would tell myself, well, maybe one day I'll eat it. Right. So
Hmm.
I would free myself from the entrapment of food in general. And I was like, all I want to do is feed my body, and I want to eat abundantly, and I want to enjoy the process, and I want to taste good food. And I don't want to worry about what my body looks like. And I don't
Mm.
want to worry about this and that and the other thing. And yes, I lost 70 pounds, right? But I didn't do it for that. That was just a side effect bonus thing that happened. And even to this day, like, my body isn't who I am necessarily, like the image. Because I still don't do this for maintaining a specific body type. I don't do
Hmm.
it for that. I do it because it feels good. I feel hydrated. It's easy. I love it. I enjoy creating raw food stuff in the kitchen. And on top of all of that, it's now my reality. Like, when I wake up and I think of what to have, I default to raw food because I've been doing it for 9 years, and it's just like so automatic now. And it's
Yeah.
so interesting to me to be at this point, because at the beginning, it would tell me that, and I would not have believed you. I'd been like, no way. Like, I still
Yeah.
like think about these foods or whatever. Like, I remember a couple years ago, somebody mentioned muffins, and I was like, oh yeah, muffins were a thing. Like, I totally forgot they even existed until I
Yeah.
was reminded, right?
Yeah.
So it does become your new reality. And I think that's really what it was for me. It was just releasing all of the noise and just being like, I'm just going to eat whole plants, and I'm just
Yeah.
going to enjoy it. I'm going to have fun, and I'm not going to worry about, healing this or overcoming that or whatever. If it comes, it comes. And if it
Hmm.
doesn't, it doesn't. But I want to start fueling myself properly
Hmm.
instead. So that's kind of, I feel, how I got to that point.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's a yeah, it's part of the raw food mystique, and you're deeper in the raw food world than I am, and I've dabbled here and there, and been aware of it as long as you have, I think. But it's this kind of it's this promise that it will solve all of your
Mhm.
problems
Mhm.
completely overnight. You'll be transformed. You'll be essentially immortal. You're gonna look 30 years younger. You're gonna, fix your eyesight. You're just gonna be perfected in the human form that you are. And obviously, we're drawn to any sort of diet protocol or we're trying to solve the problem, right? We're overweight. We don't feel good. We have health issues, whatever it is. And so I think part of the reason both of us found raw food early was not just because it had this bizarre SEO presence, because of mostly because of David Wolf and Shazzy and all the rest of them,
Yep.
but also because those were big, exciting promises. It was sort of like, oh, I can be delivered from all of this unhappiness and this competitive dismay that I'm experiencing. And so I think that when people are, whether they're starting off on a raw diet or they're starting off on a whole plant-based diet or whatever it is, that decoupling, I'm just fueling myself. I am doing this for, this is the optimal food that I can be giving my body, and this is an act of self-love, from all of the promises that are embedded in diet culture. Because the reason raw food initially appealed to us was because we were stuck in diet culture. I was like, hey, this is going to solve all of my problems. And so it's like, it's so difficult to get to that place. And like you say, I think it is a rock bottom process. I think the only way that you can get there is that it's really, you're just out of alternatives, because you're so done. Just so worn out from being in the cycle.
Exactly. I'm so glad you brought that up, because one thing that I talk a lot about is the perfectionism and the guarantees and the absolutes. In the raw community, I've noticed a lot of people say things like, if you go raw, you'll never get sick, or
Right.
you have to do this thing and then you'll heal whatever, and all disease is gone. So like these absolute statements like never get sick, or all disease, or heal everything. These words are really dangerous, because there's never a guarantee. I mean, there's never a guarantee in anything. And we need to realize that as individuals. So when we are consuming content online, when we see absolute statements, to really take a step back and ask ourselves, what are they trying to prove? What are they trying to do? Are they trying to convince me by using an absolute? So I'm like, as soon as I see absolute statements or guarantees online, I'm like, massive red flag, because usually that's not what you're going to get if you do the thing. And I've also noticed a lot of gaslighting that can happen in not just raw, but vegan, and in the natural health industry in general.
Yeah, you're not doing it right.
You're not doing it right.
Yeah.
You didn't go long enough. You have to keep going. And these people are experiencing these symptoms. They're not going to the doctor, or they're not addressing what could be an underlying cause. And then they just use words like detox, or whatever, I'm not a healing journey, or whatever. They'll use these words to justify their symptoms, and they don't go and check them out. They don't do tests because maybe they don't want to go to the doctor, or they don't believe in tests, or whatever it is. And maybe they're deficient in something, and they just keep going because they're pushed to keep going. Like keep doing that 200-day juice fast or whatever. And they get to a point where now a lot of people will go back to eating animal products, because they're pushed to a point where their body just can't do it anymore, because they're still trying to, they put the food on this pedestal, or this protocol on a pedestal, like it's going to do the thing because this person told me it would. And suddenly they're at this point where they don't know what else to do, because their symptoms are worse. And when it could have been something super simple, like adding a Brazil nut to get your selenium. Like your hair's falling out. One of the reasons why a lot of people do lose their hair is, number one, they're not eating enough. Number two, they're eating no fat, because I know a lot of people in the raw community eat no fat, or they're scared of it.
Right. If a little is good, none is better.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. Or they're stressed out, or they're missing selenium, which is a big one. And a lot of people who are eating like super, super high fruit, like no fat or anything like that, like very little greens, they're experiencing hair loss. Some people's teeth are falling out. Like, it's really sad to see. Menstrual cycles disappear. They lose too much weight, and then they get stuck in this like disordered eating pattern. And they think they're doing good because they're eating raw food, but it's like, it's your behavior with the food. It's not actually the raw food's fault. It's your behavior and how you're using the food in your body and in your life. So yeah, I'm really glad you brought that up, because the absolute statements and the guarantees are definitely dangerous. And whenever you see one, you really got to take a step back and ask yourself, what is this person trying to convince me of or scare me about, right? Like there's a lot of fear, like if you
Right.
don't do this, you're going to be so toxic or whatever. And it scares people into choosing raw. And for me, I choose raw because I love raw. I don't choose raw because I have to, or I'll get sick if I eat cooked food. Like I don't choose based out of fear or because somebody online told me like, oh no, like you can't eat that thing because of whatever, or I don't eat all organic. I do eat a lot of organic stuff, but I don't eat exclusively organic. And some people are like, well, you're going to get sick if you don't eat all organic, exclusively. And I'm like, I'm doing pretty good. I think like I'd rather have the variety and the abundance and save the money than force myself to spend money that I don't have on a low variety of food and not be able to eat an abundance because it's so expensive and I can only afford X amount of calories a day, right? So there's like a fine balance in there too. We have to take everybody's situation into consideration. Like, do we have the funds? Is the food available? And there's so many questions. So the absolutes can really scare people into these choices and push them into, to stay stuck in that diet culture realm.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, I worked at True North Health Center for a while, which is a supervised fasting center. I think most people watching this are going to be familiar with that. And it was very much, there were a lot of people who were caught in this sort of detox trap, where there is a lot of gaslighting involved. And honestly, a lot of times what's going on is, and I think you've talked about this when you talked to Will Bolsowitz about fiber fueled and just having a variety of lots of different types of food in the diet. If you're overly restrictive in terms of what you're eating, you're sort of losing the ability to successfully digest and assimilate a lot of foods. And so when you try to bring them in, well, now we have all kinds of digestive issues. It's not working very well. And so that means I need to fast again, and then you're just doing all sorts of things to your microbiome that are going to be hard to recover from. And people are just putting themselves through these cycles, but they're having results. They're having results when they're fasting. They're having results when they're on Banana Island. They're having results when they're doing a 120-day juice feast or whatever it is. And so the result becomes the shining beacon of, I got there once. That was the only way that I could get there, was to restrict myself. So that must be the answer. I have to just be harder on myself and deprive myself more. And if I can do that, then I'll reach the promised land and I will finally be happy and loved and free and everything will be great. And so inverting that and just living as if you're already in that space, it's easy to say, but it's very, very, very difficult for people to do, especially if they're not in a supportive home environment, or they're, all kinds of different things can come up. So this is just such a common dilemma that people are facing, I think.
Yeah, that's so true. And I know a lot of people, when they do like, their detox or their cleanse or whatever, a lot of the testimonials or stories that you hear are usually at the end of the fast, when they have restrict themselves. Maybe their gut is already compromised, because 98% of people with eating disorders have a weak, compromised gut microbiome, and they have serious digestive issues. So when they restrict fiber in general, right, juice cleansing, water fasting, they're not challenging their gut. So it feels good. It feels like you have nothing going on in there and you're like, finally, for once, I feel good. But it's not the solution, because the solution is actually building your gut, building your gut with the variety. And so I like to say, for these people who are stuck in that cycle, doing the cleanse or the detox is kind of like laying on the couch. It feels great, but you're not challenging your muscles, right? We challenge our muscles to grow them, and that hurts. We challenge our breath to improve our lung capacity. We challenge our heart with cardio. We challenge our mind with meditation. We challenge our, circulation with cold showers. We do these things that are uncomfortable in order to grow or to be better. Why is the gut any different, right? Like, why do we have to have this flawless digestion and never, ever, 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 ever have, one little gas part or whatever? it's like this illusion that people are trying to chase, when in reality it's the opposite. Like, we need to do the work, we need to challenge the gut, we need to eat the fiber, we need to get the variety, and we need to eat the abundance so that we can grow the gut. And then you can eat the foods without getting so much pain. But it takes time, and it takes patience, it takes consistency, and it does not take the quick fixes like a lot of people think.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's a great analogy. I hadn't heard you use that before. That it is. And you imagine us, our little Stone Age nomadic foraging selves. We're eating anything that's not actively toxic. If there's some sort of, I was just out doing a little foraging walk here this morning, and it's like there's so many things that are edible. There's just all sorts of, even this time of year. And in fact, there's some things that are only edible this time of year, like wild persimmon and other things that are coming out in the East Coast forests here. So the amount of variety that we would have been eating in our kind of our Stone Age history is tremendous. All kinds of bacterial biodiversity, and a confrontation with life in all sorts of forms. And we would not have ever been in an absolutely sterile environment of drinking only distilled water and nothing else. I mean, even in a time of great scarcity, there's you can dig up some grubs, you can eat some tree bark, you can there's going to be something out there that you can eat. People who are in deep starvation will make cakes out of dirt just to fill their bellies, So the idea that we ever would have been in a state of pure water fasting, and I'm not dissing water fasting in the sense that it can be, it's a demonstrated modality for people who are dealing with really challenging chronic health issues, and allowing your body to rest and kind of focus on that healing process can definitely be useful for some people in some cases. But as a tool for weight loss, I think it's a disaster, because it's setting you up for everything that you're talking about, and also this kind of binge restrict cycle. Like you leave the center, or you end your juice fast. And I've been there. I did a juice fast at some point in my idiotic early 30s. And you go straight to the bag of chips, or to some high calorically dense thing to this is not how you're supposed to end a fast. So but again, it's all because we're so embedded in this idea that we have to look a certain way, that we can only reach that point of acceptance and okayness with ourselves if we meet some magical number, or some kind of standard that we have in our mind that is expected of us. And so you're one of the only people that I'm aware of who talks like meaningfully, and it grapples with this question of it's not this false dichotomy between health at every size and just eat the chips and be merry, for tomorrow we die. It's not that, or toxic diet culture. It's strive to be healthier, strive to optimize yourself, but do so in a spirit of self-love and compassion and forgiveness, and give yourself time, and for God's sake, eat enough food while you're doing it. And so that's just something that people have not made that connection for the most part, because they don't have the language, and they don't see a lot of people doing that, or demonstrating it for them, which is the main reason I wanted to talk to you. I'm like, Lisa gets it.
I'm so glad. Yeah, it's a really touchy subject, because especially in the natural health world, a lot of people are gravitated, or like they gravitate towards especially raw food, because they see all these pictures online. And I did it in the beginning. I shared my before and afters and stuff, and I've really pulled away from that in recent, like probably in the last like 3 to 4 years. I've really pulled away from sharing too many before and after pictures. Like, I don't even know when the last time I shared one, like years ago. Because I feel like, I'm still getting followers. I don't need to share my before and after to get followers. Yes, those get a lot of likes, and they get a lot of shares, they get a lot of comments, but that's not what I want to promote. I want to promote raw food, and I want to promote how awesome it is to add it to your diet. I'm not here to make people 100% raw. I'm here to share the joy of raw food, whether you're all raw or you want to go all raw or you want to just do half raw or whatever. I just want people to eat more raw food, right? And I want them to enjoy it and to not think that they have to fit into a specific box or do some kind of detox or whatever. I just want people to eat more raw food because, like, we know only 3% of people get enough fiber a day in general,
Right.
right?
Right.
We're talking like they're getting half the RDA, which is already super low at 30 grams a day. Like Nate and I are eating 80 to 100 plus grams of
I don't
fiber a
know
day.
how I mean, yeah, this is like Neil Barnard had that bit a long time ago where he was talking about how much cheese the average American consumes. And he's like, and someone's eaten mine because like I'm not eating any. And so I think that same thing with like the average amount of fiber consumed. Like who is eating essentially? But it's, it's the keto diets. It's people who are doing these very, very low carb meat and cheese diets. And it's gross.
No, and it's
They-
sad too, because when you restrict your fiber and you atrophy your gut, because we all know, I mean, I wish we all knew that the human microbiome is actually endangered. It's technically endangered because of our diets and our modern lifestyle. Our guts are dying and our gut variety is dying. And it's really kind of scary because it's like women pass our gut microbiome to our babies. And if our microbiome is compromised, our baby's microbiome is going to be compromised. And then we're feeding them whatever, and their gut gets worse. And then we wonder why our babies are sick. And it's just
and then
like,
we put them on antibiotics,
which makes it even worse.
several
Yeah,
times a year throughout their childhood. And cesarean sections are happening more and more and more, and fewer vaginal births. And so the transfer of the gut bugs is being compromised, and the environment has gotten so sterile. I grew up as such a hippie, crawling around on the ground with animals and everything. I think of this experience that modern kids have in these very sterile homes where everything is super, super clean, and everybody, especially in the last couple of years, is a total germaphobe. And so there's like slather on the hand sanitizer, and it's a total crisis for these little critters that outnumber us 10 to 1. And there's so much research to be done, and there's so much fascinating intellectual terrain there, because there are definite correlations between personality and microbiome. Like especially I think the best documented correlation I've seen is between what we call neuroticism and personality research. So how emotionally unstable are you is very strongly correlated with having certain kinds of bugs predominating rather than others. But it's a total chicken and the egg question, like which of these is driving which result? How is this working? And I don't think anybody really knows the answers to that, but we should start at square one, which is maybe eating something closer to a diet appropriate for the species.
Exactly. And I see a lot of people like going back a little bit to the fasting question thing. A lot of people will think, I'm feeding every cell in my body, or I'm healing every cell in my body. Little do they realize that the majority of the cells in our body are microbiome, right? So if you want to feed every cell of your body, you got to feed the probiotics too, right? And their food is fiber and fiber variety. So when you are on a keto diet, or you're eating low fiber diet like standard North American or whatever, when you start to eat things like a salad or beans or whatever it is, and you get all this gas and bloating, immediately people are like, that's not human food because it gave me gas. And it's like, well, we have to ask ourselves, why did that give you gas? Because I know a lot of raw foodies who won't eat broccoli because broccoli gives them gas. And gas is kind of like one of those things that people think is bad, but it's actually good in a way. Like it's showing your gut.
The bugs are happy.
The bugs are
they're digesting.
Gut microbiome is working. The thing is that gas is normal, but an excessive amount of gas is just a signal that you ate too much fiber for your weakened microbiome. But you can increase slowly over time, like Dr. Will Bulsiewicz talks about, slow and low. Start with, like one Brussels sprout.
Yeah,
That's it.
literally
Just
like a
one.
tea. Dr. Greger says like a teaspoon of beans, like
Yeah.
just like seriously, just microdose this stuff.
That
If you're struggling with it. Yeah. Yeah.
and
And
to not
it's
yeah, and to not say that it's the food that's not human food,
right,
right?
right.
Let's really like look at your gut. Why is that happening?
Right, right.
Mm.
And I mean, I think it gets into I mean, there's other confounders because when you get into pesticides and you get into sort of the other additives in the modern food supply, like maybe there are reactions going on. Maybe you are gluten intolerant because of the glyphosate in wheat, maybe there are things that you're having trouble with that you're not going to be able to kind of microdose your way out of. But I think the to experiment with it and to really give yourself the best shot at the widest variety of food possible is going to optimize the microbiome and your health and the outcomes that you care about, which is your subjective state in the world. Do you like I stalk your social media enough to to have a sense that you're just a very happy person. You and Nate both seem to have a lot of happiness both together and just in the way that you live your life. And has that been a transformation for you from when you first started off, when you were dealing with a lot more self-loathing and a lot more insecurity around things? Like how much of that is coming to a peaceful place with your diet and your lifestyle, and how much of it is really repopulating your gut and possibly giving yourself some nice little happy hormones that come along with that that have changed your personality in some sense? Is that something that you've experienced at all? Because I watch your social media and I'm like, she's just you guys are just on such an even keel. I could see myself getting irritated by things that you guys just laugh off. It's
Yeah,
just beautiful to see.
yeah. As a kid, I was always like really happy and
Mm.
pretty like I brush a lot off. But I also, as a child, like teen, I would hold a lot in because I would be like people pleaser and I wouldn't want people to question or judge or whatever. So I did hold a lot in when I was a kid. But now I don't as much anymore. It's more like I just share whatever I'm gonna feel or whatever, for the most part, obviously. But I feel like I remember when I was doing that keto challenge at the gym, and this was right before I went raw and vegan. I was eating, get this, I had a personal trainer. I joined this like 60-day challenge at the gym. And if you had the best transformation, not the most weight loss, but the best transformation, you could win either a trip to wherever or a 1 year worth of personal training. But you had to have a personal trainer 3 days a week, blah, 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 blah. I had to follow like a meal plan, all this stuff. So I joined this because I'm like, oh yeah, I'm going to do it. Right. And so I'm like writing stuff in my journal, my food journal, and she would check my food journal every day. I would see her at the gym, and I saw her 3 days a week, and I did like 1 hour of cardio every single day except Sunday. So not only was I doing cardio every day, but I was doing weights 3 times a week, one rest day. And there were times that she sent me home twice because I didn't have enough energy to even do like assisted pull-up machine and stuff. So but in the journal, most of the days, like when I enter all the food, when I look back in Chronometer, some days I was eating between 800 and 1200 calories. And it
Wow.
was a lot of animal products. It was like the only carbs I would have would be like like a little bit. We're talking like a little bit, like 1 cup of broccoli, or like a little bit of oatmeal in the morning with my whey. And I didn't eat any carbs after 4. Like it was like really, 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 really restrictive. And before that too, I was working at the natural health store. And even though I knew all the stuff, I wasn't doing any of the things. I was like, I would take pills to compensate for my diet, and I would eat the Doritos while I was putting price tags on the pill bottles and stuff. And during that time, and then the gym time, I was really mean. And I really feel bad about like the people that I was kind of mean to, like just like short and like annoyed at everything. And I was just a mean person, and I don't like who I was at that time. But then when I went raw, I think it was more like I was excited about the food. The colors were pretty. I was like doing something for myself. And I didn't have that like self-love because I didn't really love myself. I mean, I didn't really love my life at the time. And I thought that I needed to eat food in order to love my life. Like I couldn't go out with friends without eating food, right?
Mm.
Without eating what they were eating. Otherwise, I wasn't really enjoying my life. So when I switched over, I was really focused on just loving my body and giving my body what I felt would be the best abundantly, and just like I said, releasing all of the need to be perfect or whatever. And then with time, as my gut was changing, I noticed that I was just happier. I was more hydrated. I
Mm.
didn't get headaches all the time. Like I wasn't tired all the time, because I think tired and headaches and feeling
Mhm.
crappy, that just makes you in a bad mood anyways, let alone, what you're eating and stuff. So like if you're feeling horrible in your body, you're naturally going to have like, crappy attitude and stuff like that. But when I started feeling better in my body, I was like, this is good. Like now I was just naturally happier because I felt better. But then also I was building my gut microbiome, and the brain gut connection is so intricate. And I think that really brought me to a place where I actually found that I really truly did enjoy my life. I just didn't have to default to those foods or whatever activities or whatever I was doing that were causing so many issues in my life. But yeah, I
Yeah.
did definitely feel that going raw and changing how I was eating really impacted, brought me back to where I was when I was a kid. That's really
Yeah.
feel
Yeah.
like, yeah.
I just heard the ghost of durian writer in my head and his accent saying, "You're undercarbed."
Let's put down the guns, pick up the carbs.
um,
Totally, totally. I know
yeah,
I'm just not eating enough. And like,
not eating.
everybody knows what hangry is. When you're
Mhm.
hungry, you get mad and you just want food. So
Mhm.
when you're
Mhm.
fueled up and you're eating enough and you feel good, like it's hard to get hangry. And when you
Yeah.
feel, you feel like, yeah, it's been a little while since you've eaten, just like go grab some fruit, eat some bananas, make a smoothie, have a salad,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, yeah. But it's part of the special sauce of eating raw that I've experienced compared to like a whole food
Mhm.
vegan diet, is the hydration and the tiredness that can because the raw food is digesting so quickly that you're not getting that sort of in some sense reassuring little food coma that comes from like a big bowl of mashed potatoes or something. And I think that it's a whole different relationship to the satiety question, because when we're worried about, am I going to have enough food to get to work all morning before my lunch break, I've got to eat enough food to really feel full, and that is hard to do on a raw food diet unless you're eating kind of all the time. And then you've got to come to grips with the fact that you're eating all the time and it feels like you're eating too much, and it's like that's a disaster because now you're not going to meet your goals, and you just get into this total spin out whirlpool in the mind. But there is a totally game changing experience in my experience doing it, with the level of hydration that just naturally comes from eating a raw food diet, and that coupled with, as long as you are eating enough and kind of keeping that glycogen full, and the relatively quick digesting process, and not experiencing that sort of like, I need to take a nap after my lunch.
Yeah, it's interesting you brought that up too, because when people do go raw, they typically naturally eat less calories because it's, like with calorie density, right? The two top factors are fiber and water.
Mm-hmm.
So the human stomach can only hold maybe 500 to 600 calories worth of raw foods because of the water and the fiber. So it fills you up so much, but it's so low calorie that it digests fast and you have to eat again to fill up again. That's why when I'm doing coaching or whatever, I recommend people start eating a little bit earlier in the day so that they can get like another meal in, basically.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I know with diet culture, intermittent fasting has become, a thing. And I'm like, when you go raw, you can really let go of all of those like rules and different things, because intermittent fasting doesn't work
Right.
unless you're eating
It
high fat.
puts you back into the binge restrict cycle.
Yeah,
It's just another form
exactly.
of restriction. And now the next day your body is going to have the final word on that restriction.
Yep. And in a way too, it's like a fancy way of saying I skip breakfast because,
Mhm.
you know, but when you're
Mhm.
raw, it's really hard. I mean, I couldn't fathom eating 2,400 because I eat 2,400 calories a day to compensate for like my working out and just to feel good. That's my like happy balance, 2,400. But in order to eat 2,400 calories, if I can only fit 600 in my stomach at one time, how
Right.
am I supposed to get 2,400 calories in within like a 6 hour window? Like I don't want to feel uncomfortable and I don't want to eat that much raw food and hydrating food in that window. So my window, I guess, would be all day. Like I
All
wake up
day.
in the
Yeah.
morning, when I wake up, I eat fruit and I try to eat like 300 or 400 calories of fruit first thing in the morning. And then we do our workout and then we have a smoothie. So before lunch, we've had about 1,000 calories.
Mm-hmm.
Lunch is about 500 or 600 calories of a salad and then, or wrap or whatever. And then dinner is another 600 or whatever. And then we have snacks in between, like, you know, a couple apples, a couple bananas, and there. And eventually we get to 2,400. But in order to do that, I have to start early. And that again goes against a lot of like diet culture stuff where you can't eat early or, you know, like all of these things or whatever. But, and also people ask me too, like, when do you stop eating at night? Like I have to stop at an exact specific time. I stop when I'm full. I don't have a rule or whatever. Sometimes Nate and I are eating dinner like an hour before bed or even a half hour before bed. Like I don't restrict myself because of specific time. If I'm hungry at 7 o'clock, I'm going to eat an ice cream or I'm going to make a salad or I'm going to do whatever because I value fueling my body over restricting because I have to for some reason. Otherwise, like I don't notice it affects my sleep at all. I sleep totally fine if I do eat before bed or whatever. But yeah, I try to make sure that my food is spread out across the day so that I can get adequate fuel. And in our society, I mean, we have to be full for hours, right? Like if you're eating lunch at 11:30 and you don't get off work until 6, and then you have to drive down and go get your kids, you have to stop off at the store, you don't get home until like 7:30, you haven't eaten in 7.5 hours. So no wonder people are looking for that satiation, but it's an illusion. The satiation, you're eating these things that are keeping you full, but in reality, it's just taking forever to digest, right? And then you get home, you're starving because you haven't eaten, right? And you just want whatever. You're tired from work. You just throw pizza in the oven or you call for takeout or whatever it is. And then, you know, then you get all those emotions like you regret, oh my God, I should have done something to, you know, all this stuff. When in reality, if you actually just ate more often and released the feeling that eating more often is bad. Because I feel like a lot of people are like, oh, eating, you shouldn't have to eat every 2 or 3 hours. And I'm like, well, if you're eating fruit, you might need to because it digests so quickly. And you do need to eat more food when you're on a raw diet. And a lot of people miss that. And that's the number one reason that people have issues on a raw diet is because they're not eating enough. But it's hard to know how much to eat because when you're eating 500 calories, you feel full. You're like, oh, I feel so full on that. And then you don't eat until like later. So yeah, it's a really tough one. You really have to make sure that you learn about the foods that you're eating and you learn about how many calories you need to compensate for your body requirements, plus all the activity that you do throughout the day. Not like, oh no, you know, I have to eat like 1,400 calories. It's just,
Or yeah, whatever I plugged into my calorie app, you know, even if my stomach is growling and I'm starving, that's, you know, it wasn't part of the plan for the day. Or even more, it's not real hunger, it's toxic hunger, or there's just a million different things that I've gotten into. Oh, it's parasites, exactly. Or yeah, there's something, it's my food addiction. It's just there's something wrong with me for feeling like I just had breakfast 2 hours ago. Why do I feel like I need to have a snack now? It's just so deep in people. And now with the intermittent fasting and everything, the kitchen is closed, my eating window is past, this kind of, it's just, people are so detuned from their actual hunger cues, their actual satiety cues. And they're going back, they're vacillating really wildly between good foods for them, really healthy foods, but then they're playing these games with satiety, or they're cornered by their schedule, like you're describing, and so they wind up, even though they ate really well all day, whether it's raw or it's starch solution or whatever, then they come home and they're getting into takeout because they have been telling themselves all day long, oh, I can't eat more than this number of times per day or this number of meals per day. And so they don't get enough consistency and enough time to actually see what's working for them, because they're constantly like one foot in, one foot out with everything. And the idea that as an animal, we're not eating constantly. I mean, speaking of animals, like go outside and watch any wild animal. It is constantly foraging around for food, looking for food, eating food. It's like, that is what it is doing all day long. And so the idea that we evolved to have specific meal times and no snacking in between, it's just asinine. But, you don't want to insulin spike, or people are wearing these CGMs now, and so they don't even want to have a smoothie because they're afraid of what that's going to do. And it's just a million different things that are keeping people in the dark.
Exactly. Yeah. And people feel like they need to control their hunger.
Right.
They need to control when they eat and how they eat and blah, blah, blah. When we don't need to control our hunger, we need to honor our hunger. And we need to, when we feel those cues, we say, what can I fuel my body with? That should be the immediate default. As soon as you feel hungry, what can I eat to fuel my hunger? And people get hunger and cravings mixed up too, where if they feel hunger, the symptom of the hunger is a craving. Because you're hungry, so your brain is going to default to what you habitually choose.
Or to a really calorically dense option, because it's the shortest path to solving the hunger problem.
Exactly.
So, you're not going to crave carrots. You're going to crave.
Exactly. But when you change the habit, like what you typically choose when you're hungry, like normally when I first went raw, if I was hungry, sometimes I would have a craving for Chinese food because I would default to Chinese food. That was always my default. So when I felt hungry, I'm like, Chinese food. But when I started to change, like the more you repeat the new habit, the easier it gets. And the more I did that, now it's like when I'm hungry, I immediately default to raw food because it's just so it's been so repetitive over the last 9 years that I just choose that. I don't even think about, I haven't even thought about Chinese food like ever. It feels like. So like when you change your habits, but you have to like work with yourself through that, because you got to realize that if you are craving those foods, it's not like the hunger is just asking for fuel, but you're going to crave what what's around, what's easy, what's convenient, what's dense, what blah, 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 all these things. But it's what it boils down to is that you're hungry. So you can fuel yourself with and honor your hunger. A lot of people don't honor their hungers. They're trying to suppress and ignore and distract, blah, 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 to not be hungry. And it's like, it's going to be even worse later. If you distract yourself,
you can't outrun hunger.
You can't outrun it. You're gonna want, and then later it's gonna be even worse. You're gonna have harder cravings. You're gonna want denser foods. You're gonna want all of this stuff even more intense. So if you do feel a little hunger, like it's okay to eat. That's another thing people don't think about too. Like they think like, oh, I can't eat or I shouldn't eat or blah blah blah. Just fuel your body. It's asking for fuel. That's really all it wants.
We're big on just experiments in our little corner of the world. Like, this idea that is really terrifying for people of allowing yourself, even if it is, God forbid, 2,000 calories a day or 2,200 calories a day or whatever it is, to get out of the calorie counting mindset, to get out of the, I can't go above the certain number or I'm a bad person and I've lost the game and, I'm out of lives and back to square one. But to give yourself a chance with that consistency, with that new approach, just to find out how it feels, find out how that state of just satisfaction and hydration and everything else, can make such a difference, because I think it really, I've experienced that it really can. It's tough. It's tough to not get torn, pulled back in, when you do the scale monkey thing and you're like, oh, it's not working, so screw it. It's like, that's just the journey that we're all on to some degree or another. But I think it's worth experimenting with to find out.
It is, definitely. And I like to tell people, sometimes people will message and they'll be like, you shouldn't count your calories. It's bad to count your calories. And I'm like, well, if you take out the diet culture part of counting calories and you just learn about use it as a learning tool, learn about what 2,200 calories looks like. Because if you don't know what 2,200 calories looks like, then how are you going to intuitively eat 2,200 calories if you don't know what it looks like, right? You have to look and be like, okay, that's a 500 calorie salad. Okay, I get that, right? And then with time, you don't have to do it for the rest of your life. You don't have to calorie count forever. You don't have to be a slave to it. You don't have to use it as a crutch. You just use it to learn. And then once you learn, then you just, you know, right? You're like, oh, okay, like this is how much food I need to eat to get 2,400 calories, and I'm just going to enjoy it. Right? Instead of nitpicking every little tiny thing and getting so like obsessive over it, just use it as a learning tool. And that's helped a lot of people to be like, oh, okay, I really, really wasn't eating enough. Like I feel full, but I'm only eating 1,200 calories. And that's why I'm struggling. Now I know how much 2,200 calories is. And now I feel better because I'm actually fueling myself and I'm actually getting everything that I need. So yeah, just using that as a tool instead can be a little helpful for people who are scared of the calorie counting thing. Because it's like, it's not something to be scared of. It's just information. That's really all it is. It's our relationship to it. And diet culture has tied in that it's bad. And sometimes another thing is anti-diet culture can go too far. Like you said earlier, you were like, oh, you can be any size or whatever. And it's not about that. It's about loving yourself wherever you're at, while still choosing the healthier options and while still learning about your body. And I feel like diet culture can go too far and push people back into those like it's okay to eat donuts every morning if you want to. I've seen some pretty scary stuff on the internet where people are just like, yeah, just eat whatever. It's okay.
They're redefining intuitive eating to be cravings, so like whatever your craving is, just indulge it. And anybody who judges you is, a bad person for judging you. So this is the kind of the direction that things have gone. But the health at every size side of this equation is just as out of touch with actual hunger cues and eating a diet appropriate for the species and, just being a good animal as the people who are stuck in rigid calorie counting, because you can calorie count. And even if your target is relatively high, it's still just an estimate. I mean, these things are off by orders of magnitude. You don't know how much starch and sugar is in something. You don't like how ripe is that apple relative to another apple. It's going to have a whole different percentage of caloric density in it, which requires you to actually just eat the food and then assess, is it enough food? Do I need more food? And this is the point that Doug is always making. He's like, there's no wild animal in nature that is overweight eating the diet for its species. It's always eating enough. It's not systematically overeating. It's just doing what it needs to do. So we're so far from appropriately being able to gauge that, whether we're deep in the restrictive side or the indulgent side. I think it's the same problem that everyone's facing.
No, I agree totally. That's really interesting. I used to watch this show called Super Size versus Super Skinny. It was like a UK show where they would.
I remember that. Yeah.
Someone who was really overweight who ate like 4, 5, 6,000.
And they trade the diets. Yeah.
Yeah. What was really interesting about what I learned from that show was that we don't understand our own hunger cues, because the people who were on the super skinny side, they would not eat breakfast for the most part. They like rarely ever ate breakfast. And they're like, I never want to eat breakfast. I don't want breakfast. So people feel like, well, if I don't want breakfast, that's my body intuitively saying it doesn't want breakfast. But what we don't realize is that the body actually adapts to our choices. It's
Right.
not the other way around, right? Because when they started eating in the morning, their appetite came back and they were
Right.
actually hungry in the morning. So our body adjusts to what we do to it. So when we do start to eat more in the morning, we do start to have an appetite in the morning, and then we can start to eat more calories instead of being in this like, well, I'm not hungry in the morning, so I'm not going to eat. And then
Right.
you're only eating 800 calories the rest of the day, and you wonder why you're feeling tired or have headaches or can't lose weight or whatever, right? Because you think you're intuitively eating, but you aren't, right? Like we have to learn how to eat before we can learn how to intuitively eat.
Right. Yeah. It's a great way to put it. Yeah. Well, that's a whole other, that conversation about like metabolic adaptation and metabolic
Right.
damage and hyperphagia. And I'm fascinated to know what you think about all that, but I want to be respectful of your time. So we'll,
Forever, right?
well, I'll let you go for this iteration, but I will definitely collect a bunch of questions from people because I'm sure people will want to hear from you again. And you were just awesome. I'm so glad to finally connect with you. And I'm just a fangirl from way back. You basically, I can always date your raw date approximately because you went raw and I got sober around the same time.
Cool.
And so it's like, yeah, you need to learn to eat before you can learn to intuitively. I needed to like stop drinking before I could like worry about the food thing. So,
Yeah.
but it's just been a journey. So I'm just thrilled to meet you. And this is awesome. And people are really going to value this, I think.
Yeah.
Where's the best place for people to find you and buy your many wonderful cookbooks? We've been making the wraps at home. The wraps are fantastic. I've been selling everybody on the wraps. They are amazing and convenient and delicious. So, but where's the fastest place to find your stuff?
So the fastest place I would say is Instagram. That's definitely the place to get a hold of me the fastest as well. I like live on Instagram at Raw Food Romance. And the link in my bio is the link to like all kinds of stuff. So we've got my ebooks, we've got my YouTube channel, my Amazon list of like all the tools that we really love. At the very bottom, there's the print versions of many of our cookbooks, and there's 40% off any of our ebooks. So the code is rawfood40, and you use that at checkout after you put your email address in, and you can enjoy 40% off. We've got over 20 ebooks in our repertoire now. So the wraps, the burgers, the tacos, salads, meal plans, winter stuff. Like there's going to be 2 holiday menus coming for Thanksgiving. So there's like plenty of options for people to choose from. There's some informational ebooks on this topic. I wrote one called Building a Healthy Relationship with Food, which talks a lot about all the stuff that we talked about today. So that's a really, really great resource too. For people. And I really want to like share this kind of stuff because like you said, not very many people are talking about it. Everyone's stuck in the body image or the guarantees or, putting stuff on a pedestal. So it's kind of in a way lonely. So I'm glad that there's people like you who are talking out about it too, because it is lonely. It's hard to talk about these subjects.
And it's been slow to permeate the plant-based world in particular. And, that's been sort of a vexing thing for me because there are kind of other areas of the food universe and the diet universe that talk more openly about this kind of stuff. But I think there is a quality of perfectionism that's inherent with plant-based eating that is an extension from olden days raw, which is you just do this and that's it. It's perfect. You're perfect from now on and everything is solved. And there is, whether it's explicitly communicated like we talked about earlier, or just kind of this implicit thing that if you do it right, then your weight will drop off naturally to your perfect ideal weight and you won't ever struggle with any problems again. And so this kind of discussion of how this internalized diet culture can really influence how you navigate your path and cause more problems than it solves. That is a long overdue conversation in the plant-based world, I think.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm totally game to come and chat with you again. So
Yay.
yeah,
Oh,
we'll definitely
awesome.
have to set something up and do it again.
That sounds great. Well, I'll collect questions and we'll definitely bring you back on. So it's so good to meet you. Thank you so much. And we will talk to you soon.